A very good evening and welcome to Kivumbi 2022. This is the show that marks the end of this month and the official beginning of the campaigns. Yesterday was 29th, today is the 30th, and of course we're heading into the campaigns proper. The candidates are already being cleared. My name is Ken Mijungu, and tonight the integrity test is on trial as the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission gets down to business. Now, the Chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity is stretched to the limit, while the courts maintain that characters with questionable past should not have their names on the ballot. The IEBC seems not bothered by that fact. Now, the electoral body is only concerned with aspirants meeting the constitutional bare minimum, the requirements, and with that, certificates have been dished and continue to be distributed. And herein lies the elephant in the room tonight. Should they have a chance at leadership or not? Is the IEBC using separate law or finding a way around the law? Where does the buck stop? With that institution so low on credibility that at some point all the different sides of the political divide have raised concerns over its modus operandi, or does it rest with you, the people, who ultimately will vote? Now tonight we put this test to practice. I speak to a sitting member of parliament, Dr. Pamela Odhiambo from the county of Migori, Setabao Olekantori, an advocate of the High Court and also a player in the Azimio politics, and Dr. Jeff Kaluyu, running for president for the second time. They sit down straight after the news. That's at 10 p.m. Look out for our news headlines. And of course, the top stories are the top of the hour. That's the next hour. My name is Ken Mijungu once again, and this is Kivumbi 2022. Eric.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the conversation. So, as Ken said, the IEBC is starting to clear candidates. Who is being cleared and who's not being cleared, and why? When Kenyans went to the ballot in 2010 and voted for this constitution, they also knew that they are voting for Chapter 6 of the Constitution, leadership and integrity. It raises basically various levels and says that people who ought to occupy public spaces and state offices should have a certain degree of integrity. Who checks that integrity? Is it you and I? Or is it institutions that were created by the same constitution? The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is one such institution. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is another institution. We have others, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions and more. We have pieces of legislation that talk about ethics and integrity, the Leadership and Integrity Act, the Public Officer Ethics Act, the various statutes that establish the various institutions, the EACC Act, the IEBC Act, the ODPP, and very many others. But then, when we are going to this election, we have all these concerns that people who are facing criminal cases in court, people who are facing integrity questions in court, corruption cases, people who've been impeached, are still coming and campaigning and asking for your vote and mine. Should these people be cleared or should they not? And that's why this evening we have the EACC with us around the round table. Philip Kagushia is a Deputy Director at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and he's also the head of the Asset Recovery. And we have Sheila Masinde, the Executive Director of Transparency International Kenya. Transparency International Kenya is among the National Integrity Alliance, which is a group of civil society organizations that have launched a campaign, and they're calling it the Red Card Campaign, saying, okay, we have people who have integrity questions with them, and should those people be elected? It's a choice for you and I. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us.
Asante sana.
Philip, we have had this conversation many times on this show and even in other platforms where we ask, should EACC be clearing or not clearing? Should the EACC be advising the IEBC on who should be vying and who should not be vying? Let's just get this right and straight. Does the EACC have any role in the clearance of candidates for this year's election?
Thanks, Eric. First and foremost, allow me to go back to the responsibilities of EACC under the Constitution of Kenya 2010. If you go to Article 79, there says there shall be an independent Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and the responsibility of this commission will be to administer Chapter 6. As you rightly said, Chapter 6 deals with leadership and integrity. And going beyond that, Article 80 says Parliament shall enact legislation for the effective administration of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. So what happened with that legislation? That is that one piece of legislation you've mentioned, that is the Leadership and Integrity Act. So clearly from the Constitution, the intention was for EACC to be to have a central role in the enforcement of Chapter 6. We have a piece of legislation which is supposed to enable us to enforce Chapter 6. However, the people who are responsible for enacting that piece of legislation, what did they do to it? They defanged it and declawed it. So we have a piece of legislation that is not giving us the tools to enforce Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and this is a fact which is in the public domain, so much so that we were in court. I believe civil society were in court with us when we were saying that that piece of legislation does not meet the aspirations of Kenyans. So yes, we have a role to play, but unfortunately the tools that we're using, specifically the Leadership Integrity Act, does not give us the powers to administer it effectively.
So what does the current law allow you to do?
So for the moment, and this is something that is actually going on as we speak, we are allowed to look at the list of nominees. The information that I have is we are just under 21,000 names, and those names are undergoing a process of vetting. So what do we do with the vetting? We inform the responsible agency, this is the IEBC, and we tell them about the integrity status of every candidate who is on that list. That process is ongoing. In fact, my colleagues are burning the midnight oil, trying to beat the deadline of submitting the integrity reports to IEBC.
Sheila, yes. So he says, in fact, the civil society has even joined in this clarion call and in the push to have a stronger Leadership and Integrity Act. But we are where we are. Do you believe that the EACC has zero powers, really, to enforce Chapter 6 of the Constitution?
I think there's been a misinterpretation of the Constitution in terms of who particularly is responsible for clearing in that whole vetting process. And it's actually the reason why, as civil society, we are among those who have gone to court to seek its interpretation. As Philip has rightly said, Article 79, it says that there should be an independent commission which is going to be responsible for ensuring compliance and enforcement of Chapter 6. In our reading, we believe that commission should be the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. But then IEBC has been performing the clearing role. But then we have questions around this. Even though IEBC is an electoral management body, EACC is the one which is responsible for investigations and also other matters pertaining to ethics. So they should be doing more than just listing, profiling people who have been investigated or who are in court. To believe that EACC is actually the one who should be carrying out this vetting. But I don't want to prosecute this case here because, as I said, it's a matter that we have taken to court to seek interpretation, and we hope that the court will be able to come to us before the election so that we can get that clarity for now and even for future, who particularly is responsible. Because I fear that if we leave it to IEBC, then this particular role in terms of proper vetting and clearing of candidates will never be undertaken. We need to have the right institution. They are the custodian. When it comes to issues around Chapter 6, they're the ones with the information. Then it then follows that they should be the ones who are performing that critical, vetting element in terms of, giving us information, but also saying that this person should actually be stopped because they have a matter, they are being investigated, they have a matter in court related to Chapter 6 or corruption, and not just, being a, what do you call it, a
clearing house.
Yeah, clearing house. So that's something that we hope we'll be able to get clarity from the courts, because now this is the third election under the new constitution. We're still calling it new because we've never really implemented a large part of it, including Chapter 6. But it's a third election under this constitution.
The frustration comes in as well, Sheila, and also to you, Philip. This is the third election under this constitution. This is the third election where we've had an independent, like you said, EACC. Yet we are still talking about, the law that was enacted was a weak law, the law that gives us the power has actually defanged and declawed us. But what have you been doing for the last 12 years of this constitution?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because we haven't been doing zero. There are parts of our mandate which we have been executing to a very high standard. You're well aware about what happened last week on Friday when you took a case against a former governor for 1.9 billion. This is a leader. This is a person who should have been abiding by Chapter 6 of the Constitution. So what happens is that the laws that EACC has, we can call it a toolbox. there are different types of tools in that box. So I may have one tool for a particular job and lack another tool for a different job. So in this sense, we haven't done zero. That 1.9 billion case is just an example of many others we have been filing, because it is our way of addressing corrupt leaders in positions of leadership. In addition to taking away their ill-gotten gains, we are making recommendations for the DPP to prosecute. And as you're well aware, there have been some high-level prosecutions and convictions, including the conviction of a sitting MP. You're aware of this because it's been dominating the media for quite a while now. 67 years imprisonment, 1 billion shillings fine. Yeah, so it's not zero.
But it's still going to vie.
That's the point.
It's still going to vie.
Yes, you are using the various other tools in the toolbox, but there's this one tool that we're discussing today.
Yes.
Which is on the clearance to appear on the ballot.
Yes.
Even the particular ex-governor that you're talking about, if today he sought to vie, is there anything that you can use to stop him from appearing on the ballot?
Well, you use the word frustration, and you know frustration isn't always bad, because out of frustration is when somebody makes a decision to do or to take a drastic step. Some of the drastic steps involve seeking judicial interpretation of who is the custodian of Chapter 6 of the Constitution and to what extent. The things we are trying to deal with are this, and I'd like to make it clear. On the one hand, we have criminal culpability. Somebody has done something wrong. EACC has investigated and established what this person has done wrong, recommended charges, this person is being prosecuted. Now in that case, I even sympathize with the IEBC, because the IEBC looks at the Constitution and says under Article 199, Article 99 and Article 199, we really cannot bar these people until they exhaust all avenues of appeal. And that's fine, because it's in black and white, it's in the Constitution. Unless we have an amendment, I don't think anything is going to change. But on the other hand, do we need to wait for somebody to be investigated, for recommendations of prosecution, for them to be prosecuted, for them to be convicted, for them to go through that whole appellate process before we say this person is not suitable for office? And that's why I said frustration may take you to a place where you take a drastic action. And one of the drastic actions is, I don't know if you're aware of this, there are at least 9 matters in court which are addressing this issue of what is the moral, ethical threshold for leadership. And that's one of the matters where TI is a party, EACC is also a party. And maybe in the midst of this, because we cannot litigate the case here on television, what we are hoping for is an interpretation that is clear about what is the moral, ethical standard for leadership in this country.
We had an interview with the Chief Justice, Martha Koome, a couple of days ago on Spice FM, and we asked her on the issue of an impeached governor. When you've been impeached, do you remain impeached as you seek all the avenues of appeal? And she said, once you've impeached, you're impeached, unless a senior court has come and overturned that. Similarly, once you've been convicted, and a high court, competent court has called you a fraudster, you've stolen public funds, and has even gone as far as sentencing you, you remain a convicted fraudster. Sheila, in your opinion, should such people appear on the ballot?
No, they shouldn't, and that is the case we have made. In fact, that's one of the requests and asks we have made to the court. What happens to people who have already been impeached? What happens? But I think impeachment is quite clear. When you look at Article 75(3), which provides for the disqualification and removal of office, you know, and it clearly says that once someone has been removed from office, and that includes through processes of impeachment, then they cannot be cleared to vie for office. That is very clear, and that is why for us we've even gone as far as taking a matter against one person in this country who has been impeached. He has even been asked by the court that you cannot access your office, but he has been given a ticket by a political party which claims to be one of the parties that is, democratic, and they say that one of their standpoints is, we will fight corruption when we get into office. But then at the same time, you say this on one side of your mouth, and on the other, you're giving and pronouncing confidence that this person who has been impeached can be able to deliver something for people in a particular county. That's why we have gone to court. We believe that once you have been impeached, because that's a legally entrenched process, then you should not be cleared You know, that's very clear. In fact, if IEBC clears anyone who has been impeached, we will know that there's definitely something wrong in terms of how we are reading and understanding the law. In terms of conviction, I believe the same holds, because if you've already been convicted, no court, even as you have set off to appeal that conviction, no court has set aside that particular sentence, you know, but has allowed you to, yes, appeal that process, but you still stand convicted.
Yeah.
You're just out on bail. Yes. And then you want to go back to office. I mean, but that's why we're even looking at the moral aspect of it. It is just so gross that you have already been declared guilty by a court of law. Yeah. And immediately after that, you still go back to Parliament and claim to be oversighting, legislating, even on issues to do with anti-corruption. People like EACC, the Office of the Auditor General, are supposed to appear before people like you who have been convicted and are supposed to, you know, seek approval of their budgets or seek consideration, say, in terms of amendments or enactment of certain laws with anti-corruption. Do you think that person is really going to legislate in the way they should? They will, of course, want to preserve themselves, and they will not do anything that is that is pro-good governance. And so there's that moral and ethical aspect that we're really not looking at. Fine, the person has their rights, you know, in terms of appealing that particular case. But we are asking, like in any other place, in our private spaces, Eric, if I came to ask you for a job, you know, and I have been convicted, you will not give me that job. You tell me, you know, take time, go clear that matter, but you wouldn't even touch me in terms of giving me that particular, you know, assignment. But that's the same thing that we are asking Kenyans. You know, if we cannot give these people jobs in our homes or in our private places, in our family businesses, why do we want to give them that opportunity to oversight and manage billions of our resources? So there's that moral and ethical aspect that we're not looking at. We're really just stuck on the legal aspect, and everyone is saying, you know, but Article 99 allows you to, you know, because I'm in case appealing and this case is pending, then I can continue to hold office, then I can continue to vie for office. But we're not looking at the moral and ethical aspect, because once you have been charged in court, you've even gone as far as being convicted, then there's an ethical question, you know, aspersions cast on your character, which then means that you may not provide that much needed confidence or win that public trust as required by Chapter 6 in that particular office that you're seeking.
The issue probably, the issue of public. Now it comes to the court of public opinion. So yes, you've gone through this whole legalese, you've gone through court, you've been convicted, but does the public believe that you're guilty? Because maybe that's what we're actually talking about here. When you talk about ethics and morals and all, we cannot legislate morality. It's just a matter of what we believe in as a society. If, as a society, we don't have any issue with whatever ex-governor has done or ex-MP has done, how do we address that? Is that not then allowing the people to choose the person that they want to lead them?
You know,
if sheep want to be led by
if lions want to be led by sheep,
if lions want to be led by sheep, that's their choice.
No, but you see, we have to make it. We have to educate citizens about it. And it's a pity that we are educating on this matter, but it also tells you that this goes deep. There's a question around values in this country, to the point where you're telling someone that, you know, this guy has been accused of theft. You know, let's not even call it corruption, just call it theft. Even call it in your mother tongue, how you call it. And people still don't see the point that, yes, okay, fine, he's been accused, but this is our thief, you know, this is our community's thief. So we should continue to give him that opportunity to stay in office. It means that there's actually something so flawed within our value system, and it means that we need to go back in terms of just looking at our cultural context, you know, and educating people on these issues around and values, because it goes back to people. But as I said, before we got those names to the people, there are things that we should have done, you know, at the institutional level. And for us, we started making that call to political parties, you know, because they act as a first all-important sieve. But okay, then they didn't do anything. Look at who's come out of that sieve. All these people who have been accused of corruption, and that is why we came up with the red card list, because actually our advocacy started with political parties. We had actually sessions with these people, capacity build them on issues around integrity. And you know, at that point, everyone is like, yeah, you're right, this is a very important thing. Yeah, Chapter 6 is so important. All politicians will tell you that. But when the time comes, you know, those are the names that they will give you. You know, and that's why we said after the political parties, these are institutions, you know, ESCC, IEBC. And when we realized that there was a problem in terms of how people were interpreting or understanding the law, that's why we decided, let's go to the court. Let the court give us the interpretation. Who's the custodian of Chapter 6? Who should be the one vetting? And who should be allowed to vie? If you have any integrity issues, if you've been taken to court, you've been listed in various reports of public fact-finding bodies like the Auditor General's report, parliamentary reports, should you be allowed to vie for office? Because we believe that before those names get to the public, because this value education will take some time, but then before those names get there, there's something that institutions, there should be a gatekeeper, and these are the institutions, you know, ESCC and others.
Such as Philip.
Yes, they receive taxpayers' money, they have to do this for us.
Take us through this process, right?
Yes.
So people apply as aspirants to the IEBC. The IEBC gazettes, these are the people who are seeking various offices. They send a list to you.
Yes.
What do you do with that list?
So because we have a database of all reports received, all investigations commenced, all investigations ongoing, all investigations concluded, and the recommendations that follow those investigations, whether people have been charged, whether they have been warned, whether administrative action has been taken against them. On the basis of that database, the information is relayed back to IEBC. And as I said earlier, I sympathize with IEBC to some extent, because IEBC will say, well, we are created by the Constitution. And the Constitution says I cannot bar this person until they are convicted and they have exhausted all avenues of appeal. And it's truly a frustrating set of circumstances. So what do we do? Because I think that is actually the discussion we are having now. Assuming the laws are not giving us what we need, what do we do? We start doing things like what TI did, taking matters to court. But there's another thing that Sheila mentioned, because it's part of ESCC's mandate, and that's educating people and creating public awareness, as well as promoting ethics. When we get an opportunity to come on a forum like this, with the millions of viewers who will be watching this show, a certain message will be relayed. And what I can tell you is, because over the last 2 years or so, we have been consistent in our messaging. We have been consistent in our messaging to the extent that Kenyans, citizens have a role to play in upholding Chapter 6 of the Constitution. In fact, one of my colleagues wrote a piece about Wanjiko being a sovereign who may never realize her sovereign power under Chapter 6 of the Constitution. So when I mentioned to you that there are 9 matters in court, out of those 9 matters, I think only one has come in from civil society, but the rest are individuals taking matters. Two are from civil society, but the rest are individuals.
Individual Kenyans,
and not just you know, it's across the country. 3 matters are in Mombasa, 1 is in Eldoret, a couple are in Nairobi, and the other 2 are civil society. So it means that message has permeated one way or another. Something has sunk, and those are the converts that we need, because they are going to start something which will become a movement. It will snowball. At some point, there will be so much public interest. Even today, integrity matters are front and center of every discussion in Kenya, and I think it should remain until the election.
We need to take a break. When we come back, I want to push back on what you're saying, Philip, because I still want to ask the question, are we feeling like these institutions are letting us down? Like Sheila is saying, they should be gatekeepers. Are they really playing their role, or are they just passing us the excuse of, oh, you know, our hands are tied, you know, the law is weak, or, you know, the law doesn't allow us? Do we really buy that? Let's take a break. This is Kivumbi 2022. My name is Eric Latif. My guests, Philip Kagwisha from ESCC and Sheila Masinde from Transparency International Kenya.